Prof. Abdulai, thank you so much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Yes.
Now, before we go into leadership, can you tell us where did you grow up?
Well, I had most of my early growing up in Ghana, in West Africa. And then part of my youth and education was in the United States of America. So I lived in Washington, D.C., in Denver, Colorado, and then, of course, Boston. Yeah.
And where did you study?
I studied at Howard University for my undergraduate. It's a premier black university in America. Then I went to American University, also in Washington, D.C., where I did my master's in international development. Then I went to University of Denver. The Graduate School of International Studies is now called, I've forgotten, Madam Albright's father started it, so it's now named after him. So I finished my PhD in international economics there and did my post-doctorate studies in leadership. I did a program in leadership development at Harvard Business School.
So as you grew up, what was your dream career?
Well, when I grew up, actually, I wanted to be a musician. Interesting, and I could sing and dance, and I thought I was going to be a musician because I was influenced by the rhythm and blues of the African American music in America. And I'd always liked James Brown and others like him, so I wanted to be a musician. Unfortunately, it never happened.
Do you still practice today?
No, I don't, actually. But I like music, so I have a very huge music collection. And they range from jazz all the way to reggae, all the way to, rock, and of course, classic music also. When I work, I listen to classic music.
Can you share with us, as you grew up, what were your sources of inspiration?
My sources of inspiration first was my father, because he never went to school. My parents didn't go to school, but he had that integrity about him. He had that working spirit, and he was a leader in his community. So I looked up to him. But personally, my grandfather was a paramount chief. I look like my grandfather. I don't look like my parents. And then my adopted parents also come from the royal family in Kumasi. So on both sides, I had that kind of leadership thing around me. My grandfather, who I looked like, I remember in those days when he was a chief, would call his people together and, they would deliberate on matters. I didn't know that what it was all about, but now that I've grown up, I've connected the dots, and that's how I've seen that leadership is a very important quality.
So where did you start your career?
I started my career first at the World Bank as a consultant. Then I went to the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, Switzerland, where it's a German part of Switzerland, where I worked as a senior officer. And then I left and I went to Malaysia, where I was the dean, the first African to run a business and law faculty in Malaysia, the Faculty of Business and Law. And then from there, I was headhunted to come to South Africa to run, the UNISA Graduate School of Business Leadership. I was first actually headhunted by Standard Bank. They had built a leadership institute in Morningside, and we went for the interviews in Zurich, Switzerland. And then when I came back, whilst I was waiting, UNISA also called, and I decided to take the UNISA one because it was more challenging. Then from there, I went to Ghana, where we started the African Graduate School of Management and Leadership, which is focusing on leadership, entrepreneurship, and management.
Now, before we come to your current position as a founder, can you tell us a little bit about your accomplishments at the UNISA School of Leadership?
Well, first when I came to the school, they couldn't even pay my salary for the first 2 months. So Professor Fichana had me provided for me from his budget for the first 2 months. But since then, I turned the school around. I made it one of the best in South Africa. And our turnover was about 150 million a year because I took the school into Ethiopia, into Namibia, into Kenya, Ghana. And we really boosted the image of the school. I have the media background, so we did a lot of advertisements and stuff like that. And I brought in a lot of academics and got the school recognized internationally. And then also we increased the enrollment. We actually really was, what I did, I was satisfied with the fact that we brought the school from zero to where it was before I left. Yes.
Now, I believe 7 years ago,
Yes.
you started up the African Graduate School
Yes.
in Accra.
Yes.
What was your vision at the time?
I think when you look at Africa, you see that compared to all the countries around the world, African countries are beginning to grow, and most of the largest number of countries that are growing are in Africa, and they need good managers. That's one of the things we lack. But also we need good leaders, people that are going to have a vision of moving Africa forward. You know, the paradox of Africa is that it's a very wealthy continent potentially, but also very poor. So to be able to change that equation, you need good managers, good leaders, and good entrepreneurs. The vision, therefore, was not to regurgitate what happens in the business schools and leadership schools in Africa, but to come up with something new, where I wrote a book called African-Centered Management Education, and the focus was on the pedagogy must have African case studies, African leadership theories, African management theories, because that is what we can relate to. Yes, there's nothing wrong with learning from the West, the East, and all that, but we need to be able to build that on an African core. So that was the vision. And also was to be able to use examples within Africa rather than using examples outside, which is what most of the business schools do. Now, if you want people to be leaders and to be entrepreneurs, they need to be able to relate to people within their own environment. So, for example, I mean, you've written books on Mandela. If we were going to look at it, I think someone in Africa should write the leadership theories of Mandela, or the leadership, vision of Mandela. Things that people can relate to, And apart from that, there are other African leaders like Kwame Nkrumah that people can write about, Jomo Kenyatta, and so many others who selflessly fought for most of the African countries to get to where it is. The challenge now is for others to move Africa on from where it is, and that is what is lacking, and that was what informed the vision of the school.
Can you share with us what were the highlights of the last 7 years of the African Graduate School?
Well, the highlights is that pretty much in West Africa, first, we did a lot of training for UNFPA. Most of them are medical professionals working for the UN particular office. But we taught them management. We did seminars for them on leadership. The last one I did was in Guinea-Bissau, which is very interesting. The other thing we did is in Ghana. We've been able to capacitate a lot of companies. GASEM, which is the cement company, DVLA, which is the Division of Vehicles and Licensing Authority, Food and Drugs Authority, and so many others. And for me, it is a joy sometimes when I go to the shop and people will see me, hey, Prof, because they were in our programs and they were excited. Now we are expanding beyond that. We're now going into the Francophone countries. We did a program in Côte d'Ivoire, in French, of course. We delivered it in French. And we also do management consulting, where we're beginning to turn most of the companies in Ghana around. What we have done is we win them of government support so that they can be on their own, use their own balance sheets to be able to borrow money and pay their workers, and then pay the government, a dividend or something. So that way they are forced to be efficient. We have undertaken, there are so many highlights for me that I'm surprised that we've been able to do in a very short time. Realizing that we started from zero, we didn't have any money, and so coming to this point for me, it's a joy, yeah.
And looking into the future, what do the next 7 years hold?
The next 7 years will see us. We'll be coming into the Southern Africa region. Part of the reason I'm here, even though it's a very short visit, is to scout out for places that we can, either rent or buy for us to come into the Southern Africa region with Johannesburg as a base. It will see us going into Eastern Africa, and then, of course, having our programs delivered in Francophone African countries, because there English is a problem. But most of them would need what we really have now from our experience to be able to grow their economies, to be able to have good managers, good leaders, good entrepreneurs. We're not just looking for just any leader. We want good leaders that will have an impact. Good managers, not just any managers that will have an impact, make sure that their businesses are sustainable. And then, of course, good entrepreneurs that would take into consideration the fact that they want to leave a legacy, our environment, and all those kind of good things, and at the same time make money. I don't see, any reason why you cannot do good and make money at the same time. Yeah.
Now, looking back at your career,
yes,
would you say there was one major turning point?
One major turning point, I think it was probably what I could say the major turning point for me was that having worked in different parts of the world, in different, I've worked in America, I've worked in Asia, I've worked in Europe, and of course in Africa. The turning point for me was realizing that there's a lot more that needs to be done to make Africa, a better place, and in turn inform the global environment, because Africa has a lot to teach the global environment as well as it has a lot to learn. For me, that was the turning point, and it has evolved through traveling and living with different cultures and different environments, and realizing that all human beings want the same thing. We all want to live well, we want peace of mind, we want to be able to take care of our families, and with that cutting across, for me it was a turning point to say, listen, it doesn't matter, what you look like or what you speak, or we all feel the same pain. Once we are afflicted or affected, we feel the same pain. And we hope for our kids the same way. We hope for our families the same way. We hope for our countries the same way. So why not try to do the little I can in my part of the world where I understand the environment and the culture quite well, and then use that as a base to touch the world. And my writing, my books that I write internationally has done that, and I'm always surprised that you find the books in some libraries and other areas that you will never get to. You are influencing them, but it starts from that African base, that African experience, that African worldview. Others have different worldviews, but my worldview is informed by Africa.
Now, looking into leadership,
yes,
what would you say does the future of leadership mean to you?
I think leadership is very important. Without leadership, without good leadership, the people perish. And we've seen in African countries why poor leaders have done to, destroy their countries. When I talk about good leadership, I think if you take the case of South Africa, when apartheid ended, you needed somebody like a Nelson Mandela who said, listen, South Africa belongs to all those who live in it, and he believed that even your enemy, you need to work with your enemy, and then your enemy becomes your friend, and you're able to attain a lot, when that happens. I think that is what I mean. Without good leadership, we're not going to get anywhere. It's the same thing in a family. If the family doesn't have a good leader, the kids will go, wayward. So I think for me, leadership is important. And I think in all our organizations, it shouldn't just be with educational institutions whereby we teach that aspect of academic leadership. It must be practiced in our public and private sector organizations. When you are put in a position of responsibility, it doesn't mean you should start squandering the money. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the people. That doesn't mean you shouldn't live well. So when you have those kind of leaders, development, progresses and sustains. But when you have bad leadership, then things go haywire.
Now, what have you learned from your own journey that you consider most important for the next generation of future leaders?
I believe that no matter how good you are, brilliant you are, you still have to work hard. Work hard. Keep on being very hungry, because complacency, in my opinion, is the recipe for failure. So the younger generation coming up who wants to be leaders must work hard. They must read. They must continuously read. I believe that knowledge is the only factor that doesn't, obey the laws of diminishing returns. You can keep on adding on to your store of knowledge. The second thing I believe is that people must be humble. You don't, when you are in a leadership position, you don't regard yourself as Lord of all creation, so to speak. You must be humble and be brought up. I think, like I say, the most recent person that shows that is Madiba. He was very humble. But apart from that, also, you must be honest. You must have integrity. So these things for me in my leadership journey are very important. Anywhere I've worked, people can say, "Oh, he's difficult, he's this," but nobody will always say that, "Oh, he's lazy, he's a thief." No, no one can say that, because those are not my values. But they can say that, yes, I demand a lot. I expect more out of people, and I don't suffer lazy people and fools. In my leadership dictionary, there is no room for lazy people and people who just want to take advantage of situations rather than working to create. So those are my views moving forward. I will continuously do that. And that's what we also use at the school. When our clients give us work, we go above the call of duty. So they are very happy, and they keep us on, they keep on calling us, because they know that we will deliver. So hard work, honesty, integrity, and being humble.
Now, when you speak to aspiring leaders,
Yes.
what do you tell them they should focus on for building a future-proof career?
First, integrity is very important. See, Doc, if you don't trust your bank, are you going to leave your money there? If people don't trust you, they must trust you first. As a leader, they must trust you that what you say you're going to do, you will do. And during bad times, you tell them the truth, so that, you don't sugarcoat things, and at the end of the day, people will find out. They will always find out. So for me, it's very important to always tell people the truth as a leader. But as a leader, don't tell people, do what I say. Don't do what I do. No. If you want to be an effective leader, what you say must be your word. And what you do, people should be able to emulate that, should be able to follow what you do. But you tell people don't smoke, and they find you smoking. It doesn't make any sense. They are going to lose respect for you. You get my point?
Absolutely. Yes. Now, Prof, looking at technology, what tools of technology would you advise future leaders should master, should learn, should adapt to?
You see, with technology in our stage in Africa, we can leapfrog a lot of stages of development. So technology is very important. However, technology is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. If you use it very well, it will help you develop. For example, if you take information and communications technology, looking at mobile phones, in most parts of Africa, rural Africa now, people are using mobile phones to be able to pay things, to be able to check on the prices of products and stuff. Like in Kenya, they use M-Pesa, which is very effective, and it is helping even rural areas and move up their standard of living. Those kind of technologies would really help us. The other thing that will help us is that if you look at satellite technology, it can help us to be able to sustain where there is environmental degradation. Use it to be able to look at, like in some parts now, there are a lot of illegal mining, and the environment is polluted. We can use technology in that way. We can also use technology, to cut back on corruption. If everything is paperless and there's minimal human interface, it will reduce or drastically cut back on corruption. You get my point?
Absolutely.
The other thing you can use technology for is medicine. Telemedicine and others will help people in rural areas to be able to have access to top quality medical work or medical advice without having to go to the big cities and paying so much money. And then, of course, education. So on all aspects that Africa needs to develop, it must employ technology. But it must also be cautious about the negative consequences of technology, cybercrime, cyber terrorism, and we've seen it already happening. The elections in Kenya were annulled because the Supreme Court thinks that some people hacked into the system. So these are some of the destructive aspects of technology. But it was supposed to mitigate against people voting twice and so on and so forth. So that is what I think should happen.
Now, Prof, when you speak to future leaders, how do you advise them they should master, they should apply social media? And maybe which social media platforms do you advise future leaders should really learn?
I think, first of all, it was at Harvard that we were forced to, well, not forced, we were influenced to to register on LinkedIn, which is a professional network for professionals around the world. So that's one of them. I would also think that those who are very interested in social media should have, maybe Facebooks, but they should use it professionally, not, like the way other people are using it. Then, of course, other apps like, WhatsApp is very, very important. You can use it. You save cost. And anywhere you're in the world, once you have Wi-Fi, you can even call and, talk to people using that. There are so many others that you can use. Twitter, So those are the ones that I would recommend for now, but there are so many others. And as technology is dynamic, you pick and choose which ones you want. Obviously, I would say if you're a future leader, if you have a website, great, because it's important to have a website, and people can always have access to you. And then, of course, if you look at it clearly, there are others that think that apart from those that I've mentioned for you, Skype is also very important. I use Skype every now and then to communicate with people outside of Accra, when we have issues to discuss, and it's not very expensive.
Now, Prof, you've been a mentor to many present and future leaders. Can you maybe share a success story where you mentored somebody and that person took your advice to heart and achieved significant success?
Well, there's so many people. I think it's very, very hard to point to one, because I do it from my heart, so I don't always expect. But there are so many people that I have touched their lives and they've learned from me, and I get a lot of people call me every now and then. So to just say one for me would be not giving credit to the others. But I've touched so many lives, even including some people that are head of states and some that are non-head of states, and young and up and coming people, that I've motivated. And I think at the end of the day, I think I should leave it like that, because there are so many people, yes.
Now, when you speak to future leaders, who are the role models you suggest they should study?
I think it depends upon the environment. I think, first of all, if they are not from South Africa and other parts, let's say if they are from Ghana, I would say, listen, you need to look at somebody like Kwame Nkrumah, who was able to move the country from colonialism to independence, started a lot of development projects, started universities, but died without amassing wealth, like you see the crazy wealth that is being amassed. If they are not from there, and maybe if they are from South Africa, I would say look at someone like Mandela. Look at what he has done for his country. He died without amassing wealth. He fought for his country, and he went to jail for over 20-something years. And I say, how many of you are willing to do that? And of course, we can sometimes even start with some local leaders that have given of themselves to help the community. So that's what I always start with. Then I always say, but what about you? What do you want on your tombstone? Because those are things then that brings a challenge to that particular person to look at leadership from the point that, listen, don't think you have to have so much money to influence. It starts with you. And it starts with you knowing yourself and your capabilities and what you can give. You get my point?
Absolutely.
And that's where I leave it. And then I always say, look, success is not about money. It's about creating wealth. Now, wealth creation is not money. If you have a lot of people that believe and trust you, and whatever you want, they will provide. Obviously, you work, money too is important, but most people go out as leaders looking for money, and in the process, they tarnish their reputation. They trample on the values that brought them to where they are, and then they end up in disgrace. So that is what I always tell them. And I say, look, no matter what happens to you, be truthful, be honest. Nothing can touch you. I look at University of South Africa when I was there, and we did everything. And of course, in any organization and in any leadership position, you have detractors. And some people thought maybe we were squandering some money, so we did all the audits and stuff. Not a single penny. We never took a single penny from the school. Whatever we earned it legally. And because of that, I carry my dignity. I can go anywhere. And I think that is something that I feel very proud of. And pretty much everywhere that I've worked in the world, I've always made sure that money doesn't drive me, but I always stand for the truth. And I don't care how many people really, hate me for that, because the truth is always the truth. No matter what you say, it will come out, And if you go to UNISA today and you ask people, they say, oh, we miss him. Yes, they miss me because what you see is what you get. I'm not going to, try to sugarcoat things, but we also work very hard. And I think that is, for me, the important aspect of what I want to see. At the African Graduate School of Management and Leadership, it's lately that my doctor has been warning me, because I used to stay till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning working. And that's what I'm saying. Success, it's a slog. It's not you just get up today and then overnight you become rich. And that is what most of the young people think. And that doesn't happen. Even if you've not earned it, and let's say you happen to be run into a lot of money and you've not earned it, it goes away. And there are so many examples. We've heard stories of how people win the lottery, and in a few months or so, most of them go bankrupt, and everything is gone. All the millions are gone.
So, Prof, where can people follow you? How can they connect with you?
If they want to get in touch with me, they can go to our website, www.africasml.edu.gh, or they can email me at Abdulai, Abdulai, at africasml.edu.gh. Or you can find me on the internet. Just Google me. You will be able to reach me.
And which social network would you suggest?
LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn, yes.
LinkedIn,
I'm on
great.
LinkedIn, yes. I use it quite a bit, and I love it. Yes.
Excellent.
Yes.
So, Prof, last but not least, is there one piece of advice that you would really like to give to future leaders and ask them to heed on a daily basis?
Yes. I believe that there is always sunshine after rain. So if they are currently struggling, they shouldn't think that that is the end. Once it rains, after the rain ends, there is sunshine. But I also believe that no condition is permanent. So those that have made it, they shouldn't be, thinking that by resting on their oars, that this is it. Because it can change. The condition can change. No condition is permanent. So they should always guide themselves for new challenges and new conditions. And finally, there is no substitute for hard work.
Well, Prof, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your inspiration.
Sure.
And thank you for building the future.
Thank you.
On the continent of the future.
Thank you very much also for your contribution in leadership. I've been following your progress, and I've been seeing the books you've written. You've given me a couple of copies, and also with your work on the net. So I want to encourage you and to say keep it up, and God bless you, and all the best. And we look forward to working together in the future.
Thank you very much.
All the best.
All the best to you.